Good morning, St. Francis. Good morning, people of God. It is Wednesday, the 16th day of the month of October, 2024, Wednesday of the 28th week of the year, the 28th week in Ordinary Time, and we are getting ready for Community Mass because it is Wednesday. So in the breezeway over here, on the other end, you'll see some of our first graders out there are getting ready to greet everybody as they come in to Mass today, this morning. And so another Wednesday Mass here at St. Francis. So here in the Francis Garden, again, October being the month of Francis, month to remember creation in a profound way. And so here in the beautiful Francis Garden this morning. Our readings for today, let's see, continuing Galatians. Again, Galatians is kind of a long reading, or a long letter that Paul wrote. But again, he is writing this letter to combat what were known as Judaizers. It's not a complimentary name, but it was those. Again, there's St. Clair. It was. Again, this faction or this group or this lobby or whatever it was that kind of wanted to maintain within this Christian movement the traditions of Judaism. And the question is, are these just Jews in a different way, or is this something totally new and totally different? And this is kind of what Paul is trying to convey. This is different. This is not the same thing as Judaism was. Now, is he negating Judaism totally? It's not clear. We don't believe that necessarily he was. There was the whole idea of Judaism's fulfillment being found in Christ, but a fulfillment that might have been different, than what was anticipated or what was expected. All these kinds of things like this kind of come into play with this. But here we have, either this force to be attentive to the law, to make us, think about the law and what the law does for us, or else, it's basically about faith and what it is that faith can offer us, what faith can bring to us and help us to understand. It's not always an easy thing, to divide between law and faith, because you have this whole point of faith being upheld by certain kinds of laws and certain kinds of ways of acting and behaving. But where it becomes the law at all costs, and where it becomes the law that is built upon human design and human conceptions and human all kinds of things like that, then basically, it isn't something that we should look at as coming from God and coming from, those kinds of, that kind of love and that kind of hope that God has for us. And so we have this great fight happening. And so today, Paul has been talking about the Spirit, what the Spirit allows us to do and allows us to become, which is, again, a lot more than what we can do on our own. And he lists there's a wonderful list of things that, again, the ancient Greeks and Romans engaged in that were not very morally based and perhaps not very good for us. And again, sometimes it can seem that all the Romans were about, are those more passionate, fleshly acts of orgies and drinking bouts and what have you. Roman society wasn't all that. It was a little bit more complex than that. But for Paul, he's trying to make, this point, that living by the law is kind of living by the flesh, and living by the flesh is not going to allow us the more that the Spirit can offer to us. And it doesn't deny the flesh. It doesn't say the flesh is wrong, we should get rid of the flesh. But it is the sense in which the Spirit is asking us to move into the more that we as human beings are called to, which sometimes we're afraid to move into because we think it's too good to be true, or it's too much, we're asking too much for us. And so we fall back, into sort of base actions and behaviors that, while maybe entertaining to some degree, are not good in the end for us. And so Paul is asking for people to look more deeply and to look more profoundly and look more powerfully, at what it is that faith presents, which is, again, always something more than what it is that the law can give us. The law, while it comes in many ways from God, it is enhanced and it is enfleshed in many ways by human design. And the human design has to be tempered because that can dilute and it can basically misrepresent what is God's law for us. And again, which is to grow in God's Spirit and to become more and more a part of God's world and God's creation, and let God enter more and more into our lives. In Luke's Gospel today, again, that dinner party that Jesus gets invited to, that all of a sudden breaks down into this tirade that Jesus gives against the Pharisees. He goes on more. Again, in Luke's Gospel, again, are called the great woes. The great woes to the Pharisees, who thought they were doing the right thing, but actually they were basically leading people away and not allowing people to be able to experience the wonder and beauty of being in a relationship with God. And so woe after woe after woe is given to them. So imagine this dinner party with Jesus just railing against the Pharisees and, there goes any kind of comfort to have dinner together with Jesus. Then the scholars of the law, who are different than the Pharisees, basically said, are you insulting us too? And Jesus basically says, yeah, I'm insulting you. So Jesus is going a full-scale assault on basically these human-made laws that really do not do what we think they're supposed to do in the end, especially when it comes to faith. If it isn't the Spirit leading us again and again, that it is not faith. It is not what God is asking us to become, or what God is asking us to do. And so become people more of faith. Become people who can temper the law, especially today with our church and its many laws that it tells us to do. Temper all of that with what is it that is God's will eventually in our lives? What is it that God's will wants us to do and become? What is it that God's will wants us to explore? What kind of new horizons does God's Spirit point us to that the law simply can't do, because the law is finite and God's Spirit is eternal? We are asked to be eternal like God's Spirit is, and in that eternity to find the truth of what we are as human beings. A blessed day, St. Francis and people of God. May the Lord give you his peace.